In a quiet African town where gossip travels faster than the wind, lived a woman named Jane. She was known for her gentle voice and tired eyes. Her husband, Connor, had once been charming, but now he was a shadow of that man, a drunk, cruel, and bitter soul. Every evening Jane cleaned other people's houses, then returned home to pain. One night, Connor came in smelling of gin. His eyes were red, his voice loud. He accused her of burning his food, of wasting the little money they had. Before Jane could explain, his hand struck her across the face. She fell to the floor, clutching her cheek as he kicked the chair beside her. When he was done shouting, he stretched out his hand. "Bring the money you made today," he growled. She hesitated, but one glare from him broke her will. She handed him the small envelope from her cleaning job. He snatched it and stormed out to drink again. That was their routine. Every night he would come home drunk, curse her, and take her earnings. And when he was with his friends, he mocked her loudly, saying she was the reason they had no child. He would shout, "Useless woman. Even the hens in the yard lay eggs, but you, nothing." The crowd would laugh, and Jane would quietly walk away, her tears hidden behind the dust of the road. Jane was an orphan. Her parents died when she was 14, leaving her to struggle through life alone. She had no one to run to, nowhere to hide from Connor's violence. Her world was a cage built from fear and loneliness. Every morning she worked as a cleaner in the mansion of Madame Adiku, a wealthy widow whose riches dazzled the whole town. Madame Adiku's head was always bare, completely bald, but she wore it with such pride that people found it almost beautiful. She was respected, powerful, and mysterious. Jane often wondered how a widow could live so grandly. Still, she cleaned the marble floors, polished the glass tables, and kept her questions buried in her heart. One hot afternoon, 2 black SUVs rolled through the gate. 2 women stepped out, each bored like Madame Adiku, each dressed in glittering wrappers that shimmered like sunlight on water. Their laughter echoed through the compound as they hugged Madame Adiku. Jane greeted them politely and brought them juice. They looked at her briefly, then shared a quiet whisper among themselves. Jane didn't hear what they said, but she felt the weight of their eyes following her as she walked away. From that day on, Madame Adiku began treating her differently. As if something had changed overnight after her friends visited. She no longer shouted instructions. Instead, she asked gently, "Jane, how are you coping at home? Does your husband still trouble you?" Jane would smile weakly and say, "I'm fine, Ma." Madame Adiku would nod with a soft sigh. "If you ever need anything, don't hesitate to ask," she would say. Weeks later, Jane gathered the courage to speak. One evening, as she finished mopping the corridor, she approached Madame Adiku. "Ma," she began shyly, "please, I've been struggling. Could you increase my salary a little?" Madame Adiku looked at her for a long time, then smiled faintly. "Jane, money alone cannot solve your kind of pain. There is a life, one of affluence, peace, riches, and freedom. A life where no man can ever raise his hand against you again." Her tone was smooth, almost hypnotic. Jane's curiosity flickered. "How can such a life be possible, Ma?" Adiku only smiled. "When you're ready to know, you will understand." That night Jane could hardly sleep. Her mind replayed Madame Adiku's words over and over. A life of peace and riches. Could such a thing truly exist? 2 days later, Madame Adiku gave her a gold-collared card. "Come to my house tomorrow evening," she said softly. "Some friends of mine will be here. I think you should meet them." There was nothing strange about the invitation, just a calm assurance that made Jane trust her. The next evening, Jane arrived. The mansion glowed warmly, no candles, no strange rituals, just a quiet living room with expensive wine and soft music. Madame Adiku sat with her 2 bored friends, smiling pleasantly. They welcomed Jane like an old friend, asking about her husband, her work, her dreams. After a while, one of them leaned forward. "Jane, do you want peace?" She hesitated. "Yes, Ma." "Do you want freedom, comfort, wealth? To wake up one day and never fear a man's anger again?" Her heart beat fast. "Yes." Madam Adiku smiled gently. "Then you must become one of us, a widow. Every blessing has a door, Jane. Yours cannot open until you close the chapter called Connor." Jane froze. "You mean?" The women exchanged a calm look. "Freedom has a price," said Adiku. "When he's gone, your new life begins. We did it, and the world favored us. You have 48 hours to decide." That night, Jane lay awake on her thin mattress, staring at the ceiling. The thought of Connor's face filled her with anger and fear. She remembered the scars on her body, the insults, the hunger, the nights she wished she could vanish. For the first time, the idea of his absence felt like oxygen. By dawn, her tears had dried into resolve. She whispered to herself, "Maybe peace needs courage." The following evening, she returned to Madame Adiku's mansion. Without words, Adiku handed her a small bottle of clear liquid. Jane took it with trembling hands and hid it inside her wrapper. At home, Connor was drunk as usual. He demanded food, insulted her for being slow, and called her barren again. When he wasn't looking, Jane poured a few drops of the liquid into his palm wine cup. He drank greedily, still cursing. Moments later, he clutched his chest, gasping. He slumped face first on the dining table, motionless. Jane stepped back, shaking. Her lips quivered, but inside her was a strange relief. "It's over," she whispered. "I'm free." The next morning, Madame Adiku visited. Jane told her what had happened. Adiku hugged her lightly and said, "Welcome, my sister. Your new life begins now." Within weeks, everything changed. Jane moved into a new apartment. Money flowed into her account. People treated her with respect. She bought fine clothes, gold earrings, perfumes she'd once only smelled on Madame Adiku. Her pain faded behind the glitter of wealth. For the first time, she smiled without fear. But peace built on secrets never lasts. One evening, as she prepared for a party, she heard a loud knock. Her neighbor shouted her name from outside, panic in her voice. "Jane! Have you heard? Madame Adiku and her two friends, they are dead." Jane's mirror slipped from her hand and shattered. "What?" she gasped. "They were found in a locked room at the mansion. No wounds, no sign of struggle. All three gone in one night." Jane's heart raced. She sat on her bed, trembling. Her mind replayed every moment, the poison, the whisper, the promise. She opened her wardrobe to look for the bottle Madame Adiku had given her. It was gone. Only a faint smell remained, sharp and metallic. Then something else caught her eye, an envelope on the table. Her mother-in-law had requested an autopsy, but Jane made sure it was delivered to her. The headline read, "Autopsy reveals heart failure." Her breath caught in her throat. Connor hadn't died from the poison at all. He'd suffered a heart attack almost immediately the drink entered his mouth, and it all poured out when he slumped and his head on the table. She had believed she killed him, but she hadn't. And that meant the pact she made was false, broken. Which led to the death of the other ladies. Because she was supposed to kill her husband to strengthen the pact. That night, the wind howled outside her window. Her lights flickered. She could swear she heard faint laughter at three voices, cold and distant. The next morning, her bank account showed zero balance. Within months, she became ill with cancer. Her jewelry is gone. She sold her car and house just to afford treatments. Few months later, everything she owned seemed to fade, as if her wealth had never existed. Jane ran to Madame Adiku's mansion. The police had sealed it off, but through a crack in the gate she saw something, 3 bold shadows moving inside, then melting into air. She screamed and ran. Within days, Jane returned to cleaning jobs, penniless once more. But she was alive. She learned that freedom born of darkness always ends in darkness. Sometimes, the price of greed is everything you ever wished for. And though the mansion stood empty, the townspeople swore that on quiet nights, 3 bold women could be seen by the window, waiting for the one who broke their pact. Moral of the story: no shortcut built on evil ever leads to peace. What is gained in darkness will vanish with the dawn. Thanks for watching. Now tell me, if you were in Jane's shoes, would you have accepted Madame Adiko's offer? Tell me in the comments, I would love to hear your opinions. Don't forget to subscribe if you haven't so you don't miss any of our epic tales with moral lessons. And to all our returning subscribers, thank you from the bottom of our hearts.